I got so much better in tailoring when I learned these 4 tailoring rules. Many people struggle to get better in tailoring, but it seems as if they are not making any progress. Now, people say you get better with time, but if you don't know the right principles or rules, you might become stuck. I'll show you these 4 tailoring rules that has helped me after close to a decade of experience in tailoring. Now, the first rule that will make you a better tailor is to always press as you sew. Press before you sew, press while you are sewing, and press after you sew. This is so important. Now, most times, pressing is the difference between a well-made cloth and a badly made cloth. I had to learn this the hard way. Now, when I was still a young tailor, I would go online and I will see this perfectly made outfits with their pocket, the stitches looking perfectly made, and I will compare those works with my work and I will see that there's a huge difference. Now, when I started taking pressing very serious, I started noticing a huge difference in the outcome of my work. Now, make sure you press all the parts of the clothes that need pressing before you start sewing. I'm talking about the pockets, I'm talking about the plackets, I'm talking about cuffs, those parts of the clothes that you know you need to press before you start sewing. It actually makes the sewing easier and gives you a better result when you're sewing. Now, there was a point in time I used to think sewing some parts of the clothes was so difficult. For example, I used to think sewing of a pocket was so difficult because I didn't used to press the pocket. But when I started pressing the pocket, I discovered that sewing of a pocket was one of the easiest things. It was difficult for me back then because I was not pressing the pocket before sewing. So sometimes a work might not be so difficult. It might just be because you're not pressing. So pressing can be the difference between a difficult task and an easy task. Now, it's also very important to press while you're sewing. For example, after sewing your shoulder, it's good you press down the seam to make it flat so that when you're sewing on top of the seam, it makes your sewing straight, accurate, and neat. Press down your seams, all those parts of your clothes that require pressing while you're sewing. When you press them, it gives a better result and it makes the difference between a well-made outfit and a badly made outfit. Pressing also makes a huge difference after you've made the clothes. There was a time I made a good outfit. I tested it without pressing it and it looked so off. I now decided to press that outfit. After pressing the outfit, I put it on and it was perfect. So pressing also makes a huge difference after making the outfit. Now, the second tailoring rule that will make you a better tailor is a very costly one. And if you don't follow this rule, you're going to be making some costly mistakes. Always double check before cutting. Now, cutting is a very delicate aspect of tailoring. Most of the major mistakes made in tailoring comes from cutting. Because if you make a mistake when you're sewing, you can easily just get a seam ripper or even a razor blade and lose out those stitches that you sew. But when it comes to cutting, most of the mistakes cannot be solved. Most times, the only solution to a cutting mistake is to go and get a fresh fabric. In other words, go and buy a fresh fabric. So it's always good to always double check or even triple check or even quadruple check your fabric before cutting to avoid making costly mistakes. Now, cutting is so delicate that any little distraction can lead to a mistake. When I was still at the fashion school, my boss was cutting a clothes and we were laughing and talking. So I said something very funny and he was just laughing and cutting the clothes. He was like, lucky, he was just cutting the clothes and he made a mistake. And do you know that little mistake cost him close to about 50,000 naira? That's close to $40 because he had to go and get a fresh fabric to correct that mistake. So you have to pay close attention when you're cutting and avoid distraction as much as possible. Have you been struggling to learn tailoring for a couple of months or even a couple of years and it seems as if you're not making any progress? Or are you just starting your journey in tailoring and you want a foundational knowledge that will start you off and make you learn tailoring very fast? Now, it can get very frustrating investing your time, your money, and your effort trying to learn tailoring without making any reasonable progress. Now, I have an online beginners course that will break down tailoring in the simplest and easiest way to understand. Now, close to a decade of experience in tailoring, tailoring is all I know. Now, this is a paid course. If you're really serious about upgrading your skill in tailoring and learning tailoring very fast, Click the link in the description to register for the beginners course. Now, the third tailoring rule is to learn how to properly finish the raw edges of your fabric. Many tailors make this mistake. They focus more on how their work looks like on the outside while ignoring how the work looks like on the inside. Now, your cloth or design is supposed to look good on the inside just the way it looks on the outside. Now, sometimes when you look at a cloth or a garment, you look at how beautiful it looks on the outside, and when you turn it and look at the inside, it's horrible. There are loose threads everywhere. The raw edges of the fabric are looking very untidy. There's thread here. That's not how a quality cloth should look like. It should have a good finishing on the inside just the way it looks on the outside. Now, when you properly finish the inside of your clothes, it gives your work a professional look and it gives a neat finishing. Now, there are several ways to properly finish the raw edges of your fabric. One of them is by overlocking the raw edges of your fabric before or even after you finish the clothes. You can also use French seams, which is very common when it comes to button down or button up English shirts. There are also several sewing techniques that you can use to lock in the raw edges of your fabric, thereby giving your work a neat and a professional finishing. Now, the final tailoring rule is never stop learning. Now, there's no point in time you get in tailoring that you tell yourself, I'm done. There's always something new to learn. There's always a new tailoring technique. There's always a new style or design. So learning never stops. Now, a lot of people complain that they've spent so much time in tailoring and they are not making any progress. Now, progress happens faster when you learn more. Now, I remember when I started tailoring, my work was not good at all. But I had to go and learn new tailoring techniques, watch a lot of tutorial videos on YouTube and so many platforms, and practice. Now, there are certain points in time that you have to unlearn and relearn. Now, when I started sewing collars for English shirts, I learned a particular method and I wasn't getting a good result. So I had to go and learn a new method of cutting and sewing a collar, and it gave me a perfect result. So sometimes you have to unlearn and relearn, and that's how you get better and you make progress when it comes to sewing and tailoring.